Say my name. I am awake. I am the danger. I am the one who knocks.
Welcome to yet another episode of Breaking Into Breaking Bad. This is Clifford Humphrey. I'm here with my brother Caleb Humphrey, and today we are discussing Season 3, Episode 6, Sunset. To give us a brief recap of the show, Cabes, you want to do us the honors?
Sure. Yeah, this one had a pretty crazy intro. Honestly, it reminded me of the beginning of a horror film, to be honest.
Mm-hmm.
No, but this one was a lot of fun. You see a new character come into the show by the name of Gale Bedecker, which when Walt starts his new career working for Gus, Gale Bedecker is his new lab assistant. You see the mutual scientific respect between the two, knowing that they're both very well accustomed and knowledgeable in chemistry. You see a lot more of Hank getting more into the investigation into the RV. He makes a lot more headway into that, and we see towards the end of the film or end of the episode, he catches up to the RV, and Jesse and Walt find themselves in a very scary predicament, and they use a method to get out, which was, we're going to see the implications of that in the next episode.
All right. Well, the title of this episode is Sunset, and I think it's pretty obvious why. The two Mexican brothers come and they kind of harass Gus in their own way by just sitting at his Pollos Hermanos restaurant, not ordering anything, and just sitting there all day for apparently days on end in their very creepy kind of way. And eventually Gus says in Spanish something like, "I'll meet you at sunset." And then the very last scene of the episode is Gus driving out into the desert somewhere to meet them, and he tells them, stay away from this guy Walt. I'm doing business with him, and instead you should go after the guy who actually shot Tuco, namely Hank, and leave this guy Walt alone, even though he apparently betrayed Tuco, right? We know, of course, that's just Tuco's line, right? Tuco was convinced at the very end there that everybody was betraying him, and he was getting really paranoid. So he obviously let people think that Walt was a guy that betrayed him. But in the past, last time we saw Gus meeting with the Mexican brothers and Tio and those guys, he said, wait till I'm done doing business with him. But at that time, Gus actually wasn't in business with Walt. But now he is. So now it's really serious. Now he's really got to defend his quote unquote investment. He spent a lot of money on all that lab equipment and all of that. And he's convinced he can get 3 months of work out of Walt and be set. So I think there's nothing else really that pertains to Sunset unless I'm missing something. Did you see anything?
No, I mean, that pretty much was it. I will say it was very creepy with the two Salamanca brothers sitting siding it, actually.
Yeah, right. That was a little weird. That was really weird.
Just not ordering anything, not talking to anyone. Just
and they break the rule. They keep their sport coat buttons buttoned when they sit. You're never supposed to do that, but they do that. You know why? Because they don't care. They don't even care.
Definitely not.
Not even a little bit. Okay, so that's the title, Sunset. Maybe it means something more, but that's generally, what it means on the surface, at least. So yeah, you mentioned the intro is like a horror film. Definitely is. We see these guys. I don't know. I guess they have to stay somewhere, and they're not the hotel kind of guys. The brothers, that is, the Mexican brothers. So they they find some random woman who's got a house kind of in the countryside somewhere, and they kill her and they stay in her house. That's what they do. And when the cop comes to investigate, they have to kill him with an axe because that's how they do it, right? They don't just kill, but they kill in a very brutal fashion. And the way they do it, like you said, is just got this like suspense and thrill to it. So I'm asking myself, okay, why are they showing us this? What's this got to do with the story? What are your thoughts on that? Why did the writers of the story want us to see that scene?
I think mostly they want to show you this the brutality of how these brothers can be,
Yeah.
right? Like you've seen just the creepiness of them. You've seen them the little violence we've seen. Well, I guess we've seen twice, right? We've seen them behead Tortuga, and we've seen them
Yep.
just
Yep.
kill the people in the big truck trying to get back into Estados Unidos. So
Right.
it's mostly just to show how brutal these two brothers can be.
Yeah, and it's important maybe to remember that we get a glimpse inside the house of the drawing of Heisenberg
Right.
that reminds us of that death shrine scene from a few episodes back when we first meet them. And it just suggests that these guys are on some sort of divine mission, right? For retribution. Blood must be shed. And at the very end, when Gus says something to the effect of, look, don't kill Walt, kill this guy, Hank. He says something like, and then your blood satisfaction can be made, or something like that. Like they're almost robotic in their pursuit of justice. And Gus is trying to redirect them off of Walt. And he knows that Hank is becoming a problem. And so he wants them to it'll solve two problems. If he can get
Right.
them to not kill Walt and he can get them to kill Hank, he can get two birds with one stone, as it were. So
Right.
anyway, okay, I think you're right. They want us to see how brutal these guys are, and they are in fact that. So then the opening scene of the episode here after the intro is Walt and Skylar talking. Walt's in his new apartment, and he's already got his cash, so he's not hurting for money, but he's expecting $3 million. So he has a confidence when he walks into the model apartment and says, I want this one, the fully furnished one with the stuff on the walls. And I was trying to put that together with when he goes for his first day of work and he makes his lunch and he cuts off the crust and he writes his daggum name on the. I'm like, well, how many people you think are going to be in this lab and are going to have lunches similar to yours, such that you need to distinguish yours with your name on it? It's just a little weird. But I was only thinking, Walt wants a life that's already kind of set up.
Yes.
He wants order. He wants, he doesn't want to have to buy his furniture. He doesn't want to have to buy art for the walls. He wants to buy an apartment that's already furnished with all of that. And he wants his lunch to make it look like everything's buttoned up and tight and needy, and everything's the way it should be. So, I don't know, but
I
that's
love
what
it
that's what he
because
does.
the quote that he says is one of my favorite quotes in the whole show. When he says to the real estate agent, he says, "Name one thing in this world that isn't
Mm-hmm.
negotiable."
Mm-hmm,
Right?
mm-hmm.
You can think
Yeah.
of like, sure, family, love, that's obviously not negotiable, but things like this, right? Like to an extent,
Yeah.
everything in a sense is negotiable. And
Oh
I
yeah.
love that. I love that saying that he says there. And the whole you making his lunch and just, getting ready and everything. It was like his first day at school. And I think he's just so taken back by the professionalism of Gus and how everything is just run. He's just so excited to be a part of this and also to be the guy that's running the show
Yeah.
underneath the captain, right? Like
Right.
it's probably just Goosebump City, right?
Yeah, I wonder too. I'm thinking about that line, everything's negotiable, or name one thing that's not negotiable. It reminds me that Walt's default mindset is businessman, right? We can make a deal, right? Like he's thinking, even with Crazy Eight, look, we can cut a deal here. Everything's negotiable. And, the story of Crazy Eight is that um, no, people have things like vengeance and resentment that override their desire for a profit to do things that's in their best interest. Crazy Eight could have convinced Walt, yeah, let me go. And Walt, and he could have left, and he could have killed Walt later if he wanted. But no, no, no. He took that piece of glass from the plate because he wanted to kill Walt then and there. So I'm wondering if Walt's, yeah, everything's negotiable. I wonder if that's supposed to remind us of Walt's kind of naivete when it comes to the game that he's playing.
Right.
Again, he's going into this whole deal thinking, yeah, it's gonna be really easy. I'm gonna go in, it's gonna be 3 months, I'm gonna do the work. No problem. I'm gonna walk out with $3 million and there's gonna be no problems. Like maybe he's not thinking that, but sure looks like he is.
Yeah,
And
I
is he
agree. 'Cause
justified?
and he mentioned this earlier. Like, I feel like every time he gets better at this job,
Hmm.
his pride gets a little bit worse. And he mentioned it also. He
Yeah.
goes, every time I take one step forward, I'm taking two steps back. Think
Yeah.
about where he is now compared to when they first started. Like, he's learned a lot, but
Hmm.
he's still,
Hmm.
like you said, he's still making naive
Well,
statements.
it's funny. You just mentioned family as an example of something that's not negotiable, right? But what has just happened in the previous episode?
Hmm.
Gus negotiated Walt to give up trying to save his family, to sign the divorce papers, and to just jump. Like it's unbelievable. Like Walt is the completely negotiated being. He was just persuaded to take this deal when he thought, nope, not going to do that. I lost everything when I tried to. I'm not doing that. I'm not a thief, right? No offense to those who are.
Well, it just shows how weak his mind is, and
Right,
also being a
right.
brilliant chemist.
Yeah. Well, okay, so that let's get back to the story then. So he's talking to Skylar, and Skylar's like, "Okay, so you signed the papers. All right. Well, so how are we going to do this whole thing with Walter Jr.?" And his line is, "Well, you know best, right? You know best." And I'm trying to think, is he being sarcastic or is he being reflexive? Like, is that his answer? Like, oh well, I don't know. Like, of course you know best, right, Skylar? Like, or is he just being completely sarcastic, like he doesn't even care anymore? And he's like, well,
I feel
whatever
like
you
he
want to
doesn't
do.
care because at this point he's taken over the role as the provider, and everything
Hmm.
else is not my job. I am
Yeah,
here to
right,
provide only.
right. But that reminds us of the big sticking point here is he can only be the provider if Skylar allows him to be, because Skylar could say, no, we're not going to take any of your money and we're going to live poor, but dang it, we're going to be clean. We're not going to have any of this drug money. And he's like, no, no, no. How do you think we've been paying our bills the last 6 months? You're already an accomplice after the fact, Skylar. You
Right.
can't, there's no going back now. And that's where, he cuts her off at that point, right? Gus comes walking in and they cut off. So that's where they leave it.
Yep.
Badger's back. Oh, man.
Finally see Badger back, and he does a little
I really,
dance.
oh, yeah. No, I thought I wasn't going to see him again. I forgot that he comes back here. And his description of the meth, he's like, oh, man, it's like anthrax.
Yeah.
What else did he say? It's like someone took my brain out and boiled it. That sounds horrible. but
Yeah.
um, but anyway, Badger, we gotta love him. So he's all ready to to jump back in the drug dealing game again after he very almost closely went to prison and
Mhm.
narrowly escaped that. But anyway, there he is, ready to go again. Skinny Pete's a little more hesitant, but they're ready to jump into business with
Yeah, they both
Jesse.
get talked into it, and Jesse seems to have a pretty good, you know, plan
Yeah,
per se.
right, right. I forgot to mention one other detail about Walt's first day at work. When he's making his sandwich, they show us his wedding ring. He's still wearing his wedding ring, which if he had the mindset that I thought he had, which is like, look, I'm cutting that off. I'm signing the divorce papers and I'm just focusing on this now. It reminds us, no, that's not how he thinks about it. He thinks about it like, no, I'm the man. I'm providing for my family. I still have this role. And so he's kind of got this duty sense to him, right? I'm going to provide for my family. I'm going to wear the wedding ring until the divorce is clear, whatever. He hasn't like cut Skylar off in his mind and he's thinking, okay, she's dead to me now and I'm moving on. Like that's not where he is.
Mm-hmm.
When he's riding in the car with Walter Jr. and Walter Jr. is angry at him and he says, Dad, you're trying to do two things at once. You're trying to be a man, like a good father to me, but you're also trying to assuage your own guilt with the divorce by picking me up and taking me to school, but you're taking me away from my friend Lewis. I used to get rides with him all the time. And, what's up with that? And it's because you feel guilty. And when he says that, Walter Jr. must be thinking he feels guilty because of the divorce. But Walt, I think, is thinking of a lot more than just the divorce. His response is, I am the man that I am, son. And it reminded me of Jesse after he goes to his rehab experience and he sort of accepts, what he says, I'm the bad guy.
Okay.
Right? In a way, remember Walt says, I'm not going to do the 3-month stint in the meth lab because I'm not the bad guy. Well, I think now he's maybe accepted, no, I am the bad guy. Yeah. And it's okay that I'm the bad guy because I'm going to get this money I'm going to provide for my family, but I am the man that I am, son. I think he's starting to accept it.
How both Jesse and Walt, their characters almost feel relieved when they accept that.
Mm-hmm,
they have so much more clarity going forward. Yeah.
Right. So there's a little bit of a development of those characters. Okay, Gale. I find him just annoying. There's something about him. I think he's a nice guy, but something that, he's a nerd, but he's a nerd in a way that just
he's a mix of a nerd, mix of an ass kisser, right?
Yeah, right.
Another mix of a Mr. Know-It-all. So I'm assuming he probably didn't have many friends growing up because
he definitely doesn't have many friends. Yeah, I think he almost kind of came off as a little bit on the spectrum to me, like just has a hard time connecting with people.
Well, yeah, the conversation, and Walt, you could tell, kind of bought into this a little bit when he was talking about the lab and how much he just loves the lab, and he tried to do it in the up and up.
Cabes, don't you understand? He respects the chemistry.
He respects the chemistry.
That was a kind of cool scene when he's like, no, it's still magical, and Walt's like connecting with him and he's like, no, it really is. And we know all the times that Walt has been in his classroom trying to connect with his students and he's like, showing them the different colored fires. And he's like, this is magic. He sees it that way. It's still enchanted. The whole thing is enchanting for him. Right. And no one else sees it that way. No one else is amazed by the things that the chemistry can do. And so he connects with Gale on that. And so they have a kind of a genuine friendship based on that.
They do. And he even used the Walt Whitman poem.
Yeah.
And then after that scene, we see Walt reading Walt Whitman.
Right.
So it obviously had some kind of an impact.
Yeah, no, that's right. Because he had to go and buy the book. And, I've never read all of those poems. I've read a few of them, but it's sort of the classic American book of poetry. Need to pick that up. I'll note when Gale gives Walt a cup of his coffee, there was a eerie similarity between Walt's reaction to the coffee and Badger's reaction to the meth.
That's actually a good comparison.
It's like,
why are we making meth?
What are we doing this? That's the best stuff I've ever had. Maybe it was accidental, but it looked like it was almost intentional.
Nothing is accidental with Vince Gilligan.
Yeah, yeah. So that looked pretty similar to me.
That's funny.
Okay. So Hank is on the case. I gotta
Mhm.
say, when he's in his car waiting for Jesse to move, and Marie calls, and it shows him pick up the phone, and then it zooms out, and we see his car littered with fast food wrappers. It was disgusting.
Yeah.
It was really gross, and it was an interesting contrast because on one hand, on one hand, Hank he's the upstanding citizen. He's the cop who's enforcing the law and standing up for what's right. On the other hand, he's becoming a slob of a person and a bad human being. He's a bad husband. He's letting himself completely get obsessed with this. He's kind of a bad friend. He's not able to be there for anyone except himself.
Yeah, this whole case is kind of taking over his whole life at this point. He can't think of anything else. Even
Right.
when Marie tries to connect with him on husband wife
Yeah.
level, just talk to me, he can't
Right.
even open up to her. It's
Yeah.
completely taken over everything else.
That's right. And he has so much contempt for people like Jesse, who are, addicts. In other words, like they let things become so obsessive in their lives that they ruin their own lives.
Hmm.
And I'm just like, Hank, bro, how do you not see that this is kind of similar? Like you're letting this destroy your life. Like,
And he's letting it. He's the way he's explaining it. It's like, hey, this is a real case here. This is important stuff. What I'm doing. So therefore, I
right,
am allowed to be obsessed with it. You
right,
don't
right.
understand.
Yeah. Yeah. But it's another instance of ends and means getting mixed up and flipped upside down, right? A job is supposed to be a means to an end. It's supposed to be you get your money so that you can provide for yourself and have a meaningful purpose. But at the end of the day, it's so that you can live elsewhere and serve a family and raise, be a part of a community and all that. And right now, the job has become the whole end for
Yeah.
Hank. It's the thing for which he gets up in the morning. So that view of the fast food wrappers was just really gross, I thought.
Yeah. Well, at least when he actually listened to Marie, it ended up being his downfall in a sense. But
Yeah.
when Marie gave him the idea, like, hey, you should call Walt because Walt actually knows Jesse and he might be able to
Right.
give you some more
Right.
information.
Right. Right. No,
Tipped Walt off.
this whole part was genius. The way it all, because it didn't look forced. I think that
Right.
was it. It looked plausible. Like,
Right.
yeah,
There's a natural flow to it.
I could see that happening. You know, and yet when it happens, you're like, oh no way! Like all those things lining up. Jesse and Walt are kind of like a broken up couple. They're not supposed to like even see each other. And then, as fate would have it, they get trapped in their old RV together, and they're just a hair's breadth away from being caught. The whole scene here to the end of the show, I thought, end of the episode was just brilliant, absolute brilliance.
Yeah, I mean, it it was great. There was a time where Walt could have at least explained to Badger when he pulls up to the RV, hey, this is what's going on. Don't call Jesse. His line might be tapped. But Badger's like, well, what do I call Jesse? Or what do we do about Jesse? And he's like, well, what about him? And that was a
Yeah,
time
right.
that they could
Yeah,
have
that
done
was
something.
completely a mistake on Walt's part.
Right.
He's completely careless there. That's right. Well, so the mix of suspense with humor here was just the combination was a wonderful, wonderful little cocktail. The guy who owns the lot, who happens to know all the law.
Ins and out of the law. Right.
Yeah, right. All the Bill of Rights and particulars. This is not a vehicle. This is a domicile.
Yeah. It was like we're talking to like Saul Goodman in a sense.
Yeah, no, it's right.
He just
Yeah,
knew his stuff. But so did Walt. Walt was kind of picking up on what he was saying about like the bullet holes. How could you have known that they were there before you removed the tape?
Yeah, right. Yeah,
But
that's true.
seeing just when Hank does agree, like, I'm not going anywhere, but I'll call and get a
well, because he's confident that he's just going to sit there. Somebody's going to bring him a warrant, and then he'll just
right. But
he's confident in the system.
Watching Jesse kind of pace back and forth and just not knowing what to say, like, oh, maybe we could ram him, and he kind of reverted back to his old self, where he's like, he just doesn't think clearly at all. And
how many scenes have there been where there's that same situation, like with Tuco, like, well, I'll just shoot him, and then Walt's like, okay, what's going to happen then,
right.
or when they're
shots.
Or when they're in Tio's house, and it's like, should I bum rush him? Like, how many times have the two of them been in a situation where the question is, do we act rashly and just like, rush at the thing and try, or do we wait and bide our time and come up with a plan, and it's never, sometimes it's this and sometimes it's that. But it was just interesting how many throwbacks there were here, like,
yes.
When Walt grabs the bag of Funyuns, how did they not eat the Funyuns? That's what I want to know. I mean,
because he probably had like 10 bags.
Probably a new bag of Funyun. Yeah, right.
But when you see Walt's face, and he's going through all the scenarios, what to do, and when he does figure it out, you could tell like he knows this is going to hurt Hank. But he can't think of any other way, and obviously it worked. It was smart to get Saul to assist in that. But man, when you see Hank's face when he finally gets to the hospital and realizes that Marie's okay, he's happy, but then he just knows that he just got played.
Yeah, I think he realizes too that he thinks he's just tracking like this druggie, this low life, not real smart Jesse Pinkman. And when that phone call comes through, he realizes, oh my gosh, like there's a much bigger operation going on here that was able to control me in a way that
Jesse wouldn't have been able to do this by himself.
Hell no, not at all. So I think we need to recognize, though, that often we've seen Walt come up with a plan that saves them. But here, that's not what happened. Walt did not come up with a plan, right? If it weren't for that, I mean, his plan was to hold the door, right? When Hank is trying to pry it open, that's Walt's great plan. Hold the door with my hands. It's if it weren't for the guy who owns the lot, who comes up with the strategy of saying, well, you're trespassing. He comes up, and then Walt picks up on it. Yeah, but it wasn't his idea originally. It is his idea, you're right, to call Marie, or to call Saul, which is what he should have done first. I don't know what he was waiting for, but he eventually calls Saul, and they come up with that plan. I don't know. He had to tell Saul, like, make it sound serious enough that he's going to leave. But they didn't say, she's been killed or something. Like I don't know.
Right, it was the suspense of not knowing. That's all I know at this point.
They do change the color of the film to make us realize that Hank has a mild panic attack.
Right.
He gets that same it's that same sort of reaction, so that's triggered for him. So we know that it touches him at an extremely deep level. But I don't know. I thought it was a brilliant move. I mean, what else were they going to do? I'm surprised that they linger for so long. They sit there and they watch the RV get crushed, which was beautiful because it was such a tragic moment. Them sitting there. Yeah, I mean, they were almost holding hands, like watching the thing get destroyed. But in reality, I'm thinking, wait, surely they know that Hank's going to be right back.
Oh yeah, they know that it's a necessary evil. But
why wasn't Hank
memories?
Why wasn't Hank on the phone on the way to the hospital saying, "Hey, send 3 units down to this address now"?
If it's me, I could care less about that right now. If I know that something just happened to Meredith, I am not thinking about anything else
Of
except
course,
Meredith.
because you're in your right mind. But we know Hank's not in his right mind. Hank is obsessed with this case. And here he is at the very end of it in his mind.
Well, I think it was also a realization of, oh my gosh, like I've been obsessed with this. It was like a
Yeah.
double whammy almost,
Right,
because it's
right.
like,
Yeah, yeah,
oh no,
right.
my
Maybe.
wife, like I'm married, I have a house, a wife, all these things. Like
Yeah.
this is what
Well, so
truly makes me happy.
what would help me believe that is if in the next episode he says, "You know what? I know I was schooled by the I don't know, the system, by the drug dealers, but I actually was jolted into perspective, and now I see that the things that really matter are blah 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 blah, and I'm going to just take a step back, and I'm going to put some other people on the case, and I'm going to focus on what matters. I'm going to take some time off. Let's see if he does that." Something tells me he's not going to do that. Something
Yeah,
tells
well,
me
I
he's
mean,
going to
we'll
get
see.
right back into it.
Right, because the realization of that he just got played is probably going to be pretty heavy on him.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
yeah, well, kind of. I did see that when he got out of his car, he took his pistol out of the holster and put it in his pocket. I have
Oh
no
yeah.
idea why he did that though. What's the point? Is it easier to use, or is he trying to hide it?
Yeah, I think it's quicker to grab. I think it's quicker to grab, and he
Just
can
looks
have his
more
hand in his
awkward.
pocket.
I guess I don't know. It just seemed like a
Yeah.
weird move, but they made it a
Well,
point to showcase that.
another point like that. I'm wondering where did the barrel of Sood go? Remember the barrel of stuff that they stole?
Yeah, pretty sure I
I want
saw
to.
it get destroyed.
It does get destroyed, but why isn't, like, when it gets crushed? Why isn't there like some like big splash of chemical that comes out? Like
Oh,
I
I
don't
did.
know.
If you look at it again, there is a pretty big splash.
Oh, is there? Oh, okay. Well,
It could have been just from water from the engine, but
the reason I noticed that is because I was wondering, Jesse's planning before all of that to go into major production, right? We're going to focus on production, and then we're going to I'm thinking you're probably starting to run low on
well, did you see
this
Jesse's
methylamine or
face
whatever it
at
is.
the very end when like it was almost completely squished? His face was just so.
Yeah,
My
because
life is
he's
done.
got nothing. He's got nothing now. Now Walt can just go
Right?
back to the lab. But what's Jesse going to do now? If I'm Walt, I'm going to start to feel a little bit of pity for Jesse, maybe, because what's he got? Nothing now, and it's partly his fault. So I don't know. We'll see. They left us in an interesting place at the end of this episode.
All right. Well, thank you everyone for listening. If you enjoyed this episode, please like, share, and subscribe. You could find these episodes on Apple Podcast and YouTube, and you can follow and contact us on Twitter and Patreon at Breaking Into BB. We will see you next time as we break into another episode of Breaking Bad.
What about a water-powered car, man?